Some inventions change the world, but few people know they often begin with a quiet pain. Welcome to Where We Tell Real, meaningful stories about the people who brought the world closer, one breakthrough at a time. Today, we're diving into the life of Alexander Graham Bell, a man remembered as the father of the telephone. But behind that title is a story born from silence, loss, and a boy's impossible dream to call someone he loved, no matter how far away. Silence was the beginning of a voice. Have you ever grown up in silence? Not the quiet of a peaceful night, but the silence between people. The kind that lingers, heavy and cold. For Alexander Graham Bell, that was not a metaphor. It was his childhood. Born on March 3, 1847, in Edinburgh, Scotland, Alexander, called Alec by his family, was surrounded by fog, stone houses, and the chill of the Scottish climate. But for young Alec, the coldest thing was the space between him and his mother. Eliza Bell was brilliant, artistic, and deeply musical. She played piano beautifully and had a sharp mind. But she was hard of hearing. Not completely deaf, but enough that voices reached her like distant echoes behind glass. Most children listened to bedtime stories from their mothers. Alec found other ways to speak. At just 7, he would lean in and speak close to her forehead, so she could feel the vibrations of his voice. He wrote notes, gestured with his hands, and used his whole body to communicate what he couldn't simply say. This wasn't just love, it was the beginning of invention. Alec started to wonder, why can't the deaf hear? Can sound be felt, transmitted differently? Could voices travel through light, or wire, or even air, without ears? From these simple, urgent questions, a lifelong mission began. A mission not just to study sound, but to connect people through it. Long before the telephone, before wires hummed with voices, there was just a boy, and his dream to be heard. Raised by echoes of a dream, Alexander didn't grow up in an ordinary household. His family didn't just talk about words, they studied them, measured them, taught them. His father, Alexander Melville Bell, was a renowned speech teacher who invented visible speech, a system of symbols designed to show people how to pronounce sounds. His grandfather had been an actor, obsessed with voice and its emotional power. In this world of sounds, symbols, and language, Alec was immersed. While other kids played outside, he played with voice diagrams, acoustic tools, and sound experiments. The Bell home was part laboratory, part stage, part classroom. But to Alec, it was also a place of questions, deep, restless questions about how sound worked and how it might be shared. He wasn't content with theory. What fascinated him was connection. He wanted to know how people could still reach one another when speech failed, when distance widened, or when silence took over. How can someone who can't hear still feel a voice? What if two people far apart could talk as if they were in the same room? These weren't academic puzzles. To Alec, they were personal, urgent. His mother's silence had given him a hunger for answers, and from that hunger grew something rare, a dream that would guide him for life. As he matured, the dream grew with him. He wasn't just the boy trying to talk to his mother anymore. He was becoming the man who would one day let the whole world talk. Loss and hope on new land. By the time Alexander reached his early 20s, his life had already been marked by grief. Both of his brothers died young from tuberculosis. Their deaths shook the Bell family to its core. In search of healing and a healthier climate, they left Scotland in 1870 and moved to Brantford, Ontario, Canada. For Alec, the move was more than geographic. It was emotional and spiritual. The quiet countryside, the fresh air, and the chance to start over brought him a sense of renewal. In the stillness of nature, something inside him reawakened, his dream of helping people connect. He began working with deaf students in Canada, then later in Boston. There, he quickly became known for his skill and compassion. He didn't teach through force or rote memorization. He listened, he observed, he adapted his methods to each student, because he knew what it was like to need a new way to communicate. Bell's passion for helping the deaf wasn't something he left behind when he began inventing. In fact, it fueled everything he did. Each lesson he taught, each student he guided, reminded him why sound mattered, not just as a scientific phenomenon, but as a human bridge. In Boston, while teaching during the day, Bell worked nights on experiments with sound and electricity. Ideas were forming, pieces were clicking together, and though he didn't know it yet, destiny was waiting, quietly, like a wire waiting to carry a voice. Out of grief came purpose, out of silence came resolve, and in a new land, a dream was starting to take shape, not just for Bell, but for the whole world. The teacher who heard without ears. In Boston, Alexander Graham Bell didn't just teach, he inspired. His classrooms were filled with students who could not hear, yet he found ways to make them speak. Not through magic, through patience, innovation, and relentless belief that every voice deserves a way out. His most famous student was a young girl named Helen Keller, blind, deaf, and without language when they met. Bell didn't teach her directly, but he introduced her to Anne Sullivan, who became her teacher. Helen later said Bell was the door through which I walked into life. That's who he was, a door opener. But even as he poured himself into teaching, another force pulled at him, invention. By now, Bell was obsessed with the idea of transmitting sound electronically. The telegraph had already changed the world by sending coded messages over wires. But Bell wanted more, not clicks, not dots and dashes. He wanted voices to travel. At night, he and his assistant, Thomas Watson, worked in a makeshift lab. Their tools were crude, their resources were limited, but their determination was endless. Every failed experiment taught them something. Every strange noise, every vibration hinted that they were close. To fund his work, Bell gave private lessons. One of his students was Mabel Hubbard, a bright, young woman who had lost her hearing to scarlet fever. Over time, she became more than a student. She became his partner in life. They married in 1877. She couldn't hear his voice, but she believed in it. And that belief may have made all the difference. Bell was no longer just trying to help people communicate, he was on the edge of making the world itself speak. The call that changed the world. March 10, 1876. A small workshop in Boston. Wires tangled across the table. A strange-looking device rigged together by trial and error. Bell leaned toward it, heart racing. He spoke 7 simple words. "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." On the other end, Thomas Watson heard the voice, clearly. Not a buzz, not a hum, an actual human voice traveling through a wire for the first time in history. That moment wasn't just a technical breakthrough. It was a human one. Bell had done what seemed impossible. He gave sound the power to travel across distance. He turned silence into connection. News spread fast. Skeptics became believers. Within months, Bell patented his invention and demonstrated it at the Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia. When Brazil's Emperor Dom Pedro heard a voice come from a wire, he exclaimed, "My God, it talks." Investors came running. The Bell Telephone Company was founded in 1877. Telephones soon appeared in offices, then homes, then cities across America, and eventually, the world. But for Bell, the telephone was never about money. He saw it as an extension of his life's purpose, to help people reach one another, across barriers, across silence, across space. He kept inventing, exploring new technologies. He worked on the photophone, transmitting sound on a beam of light. Early aviation designs, and devices for the deaf. The telephone was just one chapter. Yet it was the one that rang loudest. From a whisper to a wire. From a boy trying to speak to his mother, to a man who let the world speak, Bell had fulfilled his dream. And that 7-word call? It echoed through history. The echo that never fades. Alexander Graham Bell didn't stop after the telephone. His mind kept reaching, for light, for flight, for better ways to help the deaf. He invented the photophone, which transmitted sound on a beam of light, a concept that would lay groundwork for fiber optics decades later. He experimented with kites, hydrofoils, and even breathing devices for people with lung problems. But no matter how far his imagination roamed, he always returned to the same truth: communication is life. He once said, "The great advantage of the telephone is that it brings people together." That was the heart of everything he did, not the wires, not the patents, not the machines, but the people they could connect. Bell passed away on August 2, 1922, at his beloved home in Nova Scotia, Canada, as he drew his last breath. Every telephone in North America went silent for 1 minute. An entire continent stopped to honor the man who gave it voice. He was laid to rest on a quiet hilltop overlooking the water, a place of calm and connection. Just as he had always wanted. But his story didn't end there. Today, we carry his dream in our pockets. We speak across oceans. We video call through space. We connect with voices that can circle the earth in seconds. And it all began with a boy whispering to his mother. With a teacher who listened more than he spoke. With a dream to break through silence. Alexander Graham Bell didn't just invent the telephone. He gave humanity a new way to reach each other. And that echo, that deep, simple call, still rings. Long after Bell's death, the world kept evolving. Telephones became mobile. Voices traveled not just over copper wires, but across satellites, through fiber optics, into tiny devices in every hand. But if you listen closely, behind all the buzzing and beeping and connecting, you can still hear the original heartbeat of Bell's dream, to bridge the spaces between people. Bell didn't just invent a machine. He invented possibility. The possibility that a whisper could cross mountains. The possibility that love, news, comfort, urgency, any feeling born in one heart, could instantly reach another. And maybe that's why his story still matters today. Because in a world filled with noise, it's still the human connection that matters most. The telephone wasn't about wires. It was about people. It still is. And so, every time you reach out, a call to a friend, a message to a loved one, even a voice message whispered across time zones, you're carrying forward a legacy born from one boy's fierce refusal to let silence win. Alexander Graham Bell proved something simple but profound. When we find a way to hear each other, we find a way to heal the world. Every great invention begins with a deeply personal question. For Bell, it was this: how can someone who can't hear still feel a voice? Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, if it made you think, or feel something real, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. And remember, every time you pick up the phone to call someone, you're continuing a dream that began over 150 years ago.